Hey everyone, it's JJ, and thanks for tuning in. As I said earlier in the week, instead of a mailbag episode today, you're getting a late round podcast rewind. Last summer, I talked about rookie running backs in season-long leagues, and I talked about how rookie running backs are generally pretty good bets in those leagues. That's the show I'm bringing back today. You're about to hear the data and the reasoning as to why you should continue to target rookie running backs in those season-long leagues. Now, before I start the rewind, I wanted to let you know that Underdog is giving away $1 million in bonus cash to verified Underdog accounts on the day of the national championship. So what's that mean for you? It means you should sign up on Underdog and start playing. Just head to UnderdogFantasy.com and sign up, and make sure you use promo code LATEROUND when you do. That'll give you a deposit match up to $100. Again, they're giving away $1 million on National Championship Day, so you don't want to miss out. Make sure to sign up and use promo code LATEROUND when you do. Now, without further ado, here's the episode from last summer on rookie running backs in season-long leagues. Last offseason, I did a study on rookie wide receivers in season-long leagues. The data that I presented showed that not only are rookie wideouts good bets just in general, but they're especially good bets because of the second half of the season and how they perform during that second half. Most rookie wideouts score more fantasy points during the second half of the season, which makes sense because they're getting acclimated to the NFL game. A big reason those players are valuable in fantasy is because fantasy managers hate uncertainty. The market can't stand it when things aren't predictable. So fantasy managers push down the cost of players who have no experience because there's more up in the air with those players. But if there's one constant throughout this year's late round draft guide, which you can get right now over on lateround.com, by the way. But if there's one constant theme throughout the guide, it's to embrace that uncertainty. Embrace the fact that we know little about these players, because oftentimes those players are the ones who become big values. And that's not just at wide receiver. It's at running back too. For whatever reason, I never got around to doing this episode on running backs. Well, I should say there is a reason. The reason is that people seem to be more willing to draft rookie running backs in season-long leagues than rookie wide receivers. Running backs can produce immediately in the NFL, and I think most people understand that. It doesn't take as much for them to get used to the NFL game. So we see rookie running backs have these big seasons all the time. But is it possible that they're still undervalued in season-long fantasy? Yes, it's possible because they generally are. In this year's draft guide, I go position by position and I break up fantasy drafts into different buckets. At running back, I've got the early rounds, then the running back dead zone, then the middle rounds, and then the late rounds. The early rounds go from pick 1 to pick 30 in a 12-team league. So the top of the draft through the middle of round 3. The dead zone then starts there and goes to the end of round 6. There's some overlap with the middle rounds, but the middle rounds consist of round 6 through round 9 running backs. And then the late rounds are the backs taken after pick 108, or backs going in the double-digit rounds. And I usually cap that off at the 15th round, just so that we're not dealing with players who never sniff a football field. Now, I've talked about this before on episode 643. That episode was on beating the running back dead zone. But one of the easiest ways to find value in the running back dead zone is by drafting rookies. Last year it was Breece Hall and Dameon Pierce. This year, it's looking like Jahmyr Gibbs. Historically, rookies out of the dead zone have produced like back half second round running backs, genuinely. They've been that good. The running back dead zone is not a great place to get running backs, but there are running backs who emerge from the dead zone every single year. And you can look even earlier than the dead zone and find a lot of successes too. I've brought this up on the show a lot in the past, but one of the things I like doing is looking at player performance versus average draft position expectation. Just picture a scatter plot. The x-axis, the one that goes left to right, that represents average draft position, ADP. The y-axis, the one that goes up and down, represents a player's PPR points per game. So a running back gets drafted 50th overall, and then he ends up scoring 10 PPR points per game that year. That's one data point. A back gets drafted 70th overall. He scores 12 PPR points per game that year. That's another data point. You can do this for every player and get trend lines to help us show expectation, or how many points per game we'd expect a player to score at a particular ADP. I use this information to spot market-related trends, like how rookie wide receivers are generally undervalued by the market. Now, since 2011, according to my Fantasy League ADP data, we've seen 30 rookie running backs get drafted before the end of round 6 in a 12-team league, or pick 72. Of those 30, 28 ended up playing 8 or more games. So unfortunately, this data does exclude Breece Hall. Of those 28, 18 of them ended up playing above ADP expectation. So they were expected to score some number of points according to their ADP, and they outperformed that expectation. Considering ADP expectation is average, we'd expect 14 of those 28 to play above expectation. But 18 are playing above expectation. And on top of that, 11 of the 28 exceeded ADP expectation by 3 or more PPR points per game. That's what I consider a moderate breakout. Players who outperform that expectation by 3 or more PPR points per game. That's almost a 40% rate among these rookie running backs drafted in the first 6 rounds. Meanwhile, when looking at every other running back drafted from pick 1 to 72 since 2011 who played 8 games, so all the non-rookies in this group, those players had a moderate breakout rate of 21%. So you're looking at 40% for the rookies and 21% for the non-rookies. Rookie running backs aren't just there as dart throw picks in the late rounds. They're really good picks in the early rounds too. And if you think about it, it makes plenty of sense as to why. If a rookie running back is being drafted early, chances are he's in line for a lot of touches. Or he's at least projected to see a lot of them. The reason he's not drafted higher than he is, even in the dead zone, even in the early rounds, the reason he's not being drafted higher is ambiguity. We've never seen the back play before. So people get scared and they don't draft him, even if they're still drafting him relatively high. Since 2011, 8 rookie running backs have been drafted in the first 3 rounds of 12-team leagues. That's not a lot, but there's been 8 of them. That's the top 36 overall. Those 8 were Saquon Barkley, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Ezekiel Elliott, Najee Harris, Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, and Trent Richardson. Now, Dalvin Cook only played 4 games during his rookie year, but he was still outpacing his points per game expectation by 3.4 points before getting injured. The only player on that list to not exceed ADP expectation was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And on average, those backs outperformed ADP expectation by 2.6 points per game, which is ridiculously good. The market undervalues these early round rookie running backs and these rookie dead zone running backs. So you should target them. But the market kind of does the same thing in the middle rounds and the late rounds too. Now, just as a reminder, I consider the middle rounds as round 6 through round 9 of a 12-team league. Pick 60 to pick 108. Since 2011, rookies in the middle rounds have had the second best moderate breakout rate among all NFL years. So that's comparing against year 2 running backs, year 3 running backs, and so on. They exceeded ADP expectation by 3 or more points per game at the second highest rate. Only second-year running backs were better. Here's the problem, though. When looking at a true breakout rate, which is what I define as a player exceeding ADP expectation by 6 or more points, these rookie running backs don't look as good. And this is likely because when you get to the middle rounds of your draft, you're no longer looking at rookie running backs who are locked into decent-sized workloads. In the early rounds, those backs are ready to roll. They're going to see huge workloads. That's why they're being drafted early despite never touching an NFL field. Middle round rookie running backs might be in a committee. They might start the year a little iffier. So across an entire season, they can break out moderately, but it may be more difficult for them to be a full-blown true breakout because they're starting their season off a little bit slower. And that's exactly what the data shows. Since 2011, we've had 24 middle round rookie running backs play 8 or more games in a season. 24 first-year backs who have been drafted between pick 60 to 108. Of those 24, 19 played at least 5 games during the first half of the season and the second half of the season. I promise I'm going somewhere with this. On average, those players saw an increase in fantasy points per game of 1.5 from the front half of the season to the second half. And get this, if you only looked at their back half points per game number, and if you use that to compare to ADP expectation, their moderate and true breakout rates get even better because they're performing better during the second half of the season. Across the entire season, middle round rookie running backs had a moderate breakout rate of 33%. They exceeded ADP expectation by 3 or more points at a 33% clip, which is really good. Remember, that's the second best subset. But when you focus only on their second half numbers and you ignore their first half ones, that moderate rate goes from 33% to 42%. When looking at true breakout rate, which is when a player exceeds ADP expectation by 6 or more points, when you focus on these middle round rookie running backs across the entire season, their true breakout rate is only 4%. That's below average. That's what I talked about earlier. But when you look only at their second half numbers, that jumps up to 16%. That would then make them one of the best true breakout subsets. You want to generally avoid older running backs in the middle rounds, the ones past year 5 of their NFL career. But if you're looking at the back half of the season, when things matter most, rookie running backs out of the middle rounds do really, really well. And then doing the same exact exercise in the late rounds yields very similar results. Age is less of a factor in the late rounds. Just look at last year. You had Jerick McKinnon and Jamal Williams come out of that range and really perform well. They outperformed their expectation. And these late round rookie running backs don't stand out a whole lot when looking at season-long numbers. But think about what a late round rookie running back is. He's a complete dart throw. He's likely a late day 2, maybe a day 3 draft selection who doesn't have a super clear path to volume in year 1. If he did have a clear path to volume, he'd be drafted earlier. The chance that he sees a big workload right away is slim, which means his overall points per game numbers, they're not going to look as strong, his season-long numbers. It might take him a minute to start seeing the field more, but those players can see the field eventually. Across the full season, late-round rookie running backs, so first-year backs who got drafted after pick 108 all the way to pick 180, those late-round backs had a moderate breakout rate of 20%. They had a true breakout rate of 7%. But when you focus only on their second half numbers, those rates once again rise. The moderate rate goes from 20% to 31%. The true breakout rate is even more bonkers. It goes from 7% to almost 25%. At literally every level of your season-long fantasy draft, rookie running backs are values. They're straight up values in the early rounds and through the running back dead zone. And then in the middle rounds and in the late rounds, they're fine season-long picks when you're looking at numbers across an entire season, but they're exceptionally good picks when you focus on what they're capable of doing during the second half of the year, which is the most important part of the fantasy season. This is exactly what we found with wide receivers. And it goes back to what I said at the top. Fantasy managers, they hate uncertainty. They hate not knowing exactly what they're getting. You shouldn't, though. Embrace that variance. It's going to help you win fantasy titles.